Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. We are recording an episode today with my friend Nico Torres Santana. Let me tell you a little bit about Nico. He is a seasoned professional with a diverse background spanning business consulting, software engineering, and product management. Over the course of more than 6 years, Nico has honed his expertise in operations and client success, managing cases for over 100 clients simultaneously. As the founder of NTS Media LLC, a boutique marketing agency, Nico specializes in creating streamlined content marketing systems and go-to-market strategies. This work has helped businesses ranging from info products and e-commerce to service-based offerings build strong brand presence and convert audiences effectively, even while working part-time. Nico's passion for solving complex problems, optimizing processes, and delivering high-impact results has been instrumental in driving growth, scaling brands to six figures, and elevating their market presence. So without any further ado, let us introduce you to Nico Santana. Hello, Nico.
Hey, Dan. Thanks so much for having me. This is quite the honor.
Well, thank you for being on, Nico. I can't say enough about you and the work that you do just because I've experienced it. I've got to tell you, I'm going to lead off with this story because, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I world premiered Nico. This is not even the thrust of this. Is how I know Nico is so excellent, because this isn't the main thing that he does, but I saw that he created a video for someone else's podcast, and it was so good that I said, hey, I really like that. And as I was working with Nico to work with him to set up an interview for someone else, I asked him, I said, hey, who came up with that song for the podcast? And he says, well, actually, that was me and a friend collaborated on that. And I said, well, Nico, is that something you could do for me? And when we talk about somebody who solves complex problems, loves doing it, I said, what do you need? And he said, well, send me your information. And so, like a lot of us are doing nowadays, I grabbed a bunch of information, threw it into ChatGPT and condensed it. I sent him information on my podcast, my audience, what my messaging is. I took my LinkedIn profile and sent it over to Nico. And Nico came up with an amazing song that he and his partner wrote and produced. And then I had my team put a video to it. And then we world premiered it at the Y Institute's Y Conference 2024 last week. And Nico, I want you to know this. Your video got a standing ovation. It was a hit, my friend. I just want you to know that's how good it was. Everybody stood up, and I used it as my introduction. So I'm already starting off with kudos on the quality of your work.
I appreciate it, Dan. It was a fun project to be a part of. Those are probably my most enjoyable products, I will say, or projects rather, because to your point, you gave me the information and said, hey, have free reign, do your thing. And when you got it back, you were like, love it. And that's exactly what every creative wants to be told. And, the format that we like to operate in.
Yeah, it was a great job. Like I said, everybody appreciated it. I don't be surprised if you don't get some phone calls. There was an audience of about 30 to 40 coaches, consultants, and creatives and founders in the room, and there was a tight knit group. But we're going to reach about 200 people through that event. So we'll make sure we make the proper introductions for you, Nico. Thank you for being on, man. I know you've got a lot going on. What are you excited about right now, Nico?
My wife and I have a small, I say small, probably in today's day and age, it's quite the large family. We have 3 children, and we have a 4th on the way. He's going to be born, Lord willing, November of this year. And so, yeah, just excited for that. Excited for the challenges ahead of having a newborn in the house. It's been a few years since we've had newborns in the house. I'm rebuilding my effectively my podcast agency business that I had founded over 2.5 years ago. Took a bit of a pause this year to focus on other projects and really hone my skills in there. And that's where we met. And so I'm really excited for what's ahead there. I've met some great connections over the last couple weeks. I've been kind of a part of different networking circles, and there's just a lot of momentum across the board with coaches, consultants, but more importantly, seasoned leaders and executives and people who have done the work, not just done the talking. And I'm excited to see where their journey takes them and would love to be a part of it. So that's kind of what's keeping me up at night in a good way, because I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and that's there. Thank you for clarifying that, because there's things that keep us up at night, and then there's things that wake us up at night. I think you're talking about this wakes you up, right?
Hmm.
You're so talented. You've done a lot of things at different places. I know you had a background. This came up. I'm a veteran, and I'm a member of USAA. Have been so for over 30 some years, and so you honed some of your skills there. You had a rapid ascent there too, and did got to do some work. So thank you for serving the veterans for the time that you did while you were at USAA, Nico. I want to make sure I mention that, because I know because I am a veteran, a lot of my audience is veterans, and I want to make sure that they know that connection. What
Well,
did you what did
I
you
was going to say
learn?
thank you for your
Yeah.
service.
Thank you so much, Nico. What are some of the things that you learned being in that corporate environment and a high service organization? I mean, one of the things when people tell me, "Hey, why are you so loyal?" I'm like, because I never have to ask for anything twice. I never have to fight over a claim. It's just such great service. What are some things you learned there that you're using in your entrepreneurial endeavors?
It's interesting, Dan, because I started there in 2014, and I really didn't have any intention on staying at the company for longer than about a year or two. I was basically keen on getting an MBA, which I ended up doing over the course of 5 years. But one of the primary reasons why I joined the organization was a friend of mine who is local to the area as well, had been working with them for about 2, 3 years. And he said, Nico, hey, man, I know you're kind of in a lull with your career right now. I'd love for you to A, come to Tampa, and B, check out USAA. They're a great company, incredible benefits, and they'll pay for your schooling. And so my antennas kind of went up and thought, MBA is something that I've been wanting to pursue. And I joined the organization with full intent on getting an MBA and getting out of there. But what I found was more than that. What I found was an organization that valued progress over perfection, that valued going above and beyond their members' needs, that valued the identity that's behind a mission, right? A mission field. And that's kind of the background that I came up from. In fact, the first job that I held after graduating from getting my bachelor's at the University of Florida was working for a church, effectively a nonprofit, and very much mission oriented in the sense that we serve the local campus community at the University of Miami down in Coral Gables. And so that was kind of my first taste at working. And, I always thought that it'd be great to do kind of mission filled, purpose driven work. And so I stumbled upon USA, frankly, because a friend of mine had recommended them. And when I worked in the organization, I saw how much the mission meant to the employees there that were obviously had been there for years. I think our most recent CEO has been a employee of the company for over 20, if not 30 years. And so Wayne Peacock, and he grew up in the company, so to speak, and kind of rose up the ranks as well. And, that was kind of the intention for me as well. And so I worked with a lot of really great people, family oriented people as well, which is kind of nice to see. But as mentioned, Dan, I think that the first thing that caught my eye was the mission behind the work and the why behind the work. And that definitely impacted me.
Love that. Thank you so much. One of the things I want to get back to is the mission. You talked about the mission and how important it is. And when we look at your mission to empower businesses by optimizing their processes, solving their complex challenging, and delivering high impact solutions that drive growth. You kind of have taken that and now you have a mission. How do people experience that mission when they work with you, Nika?
Yeah. So kind of diving into the story a little bit more as far as working at USA. So I worked for 5.5 years in a client-facing role. I had, I don't know, probably thousands of touch points with thousands of USA members, as we call them, not
Right.
clients, we call them members, over the course of that 5.5 years. And, in order for an individual to handle a caseload of over 70, 80, 90, 100 claims at a given time, there has to be a system that functions well. Because if you don't have a system that functions well, guess what? That person's car that, they're depending on to take their kids to school and drop them off, that's in the repair shop because somebody bumped into them while sitting in a red light, and you don't have your systems in order to get their vehicle back in a timely fashion, someone suffers, right? It's not life or death, but it certainly can impact someone's life very much so. And so, working in the client facing role, I saw the need for these systems that they had developed. And I had the opportunity when networking with some of the vice presidents and executives at USAA to, at a time where our regional office here in Florida did not have the same exposure that our home office in San Antonio had, I had an opportunity to work in more of the internal systems, what we call the business process consulting roles of USAA, to learn about how they manage these systems, how they develop these systems, how everything from member contact to repairs to payment flows, how all of that was developed, refined, and managed. And I saw a multi-billion-dollar organization work with thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people on a given day, and how much these systems help them to do that, how one person could impact hundreds of people day in and day out. And I thought, well, you know what, Dan, I think that there's an opportunity here. And when I started creating content, at first, I'll be candid here with you. It was selfish, right? Like, my goal was to make music and get on stages and do my little performances and, make my videos and so on and so forth. And it was fun. I had a good time, and it was early 20s. But, as I got older, I got kids, I have a family, I have a mortgage. I can't be out here performing songs and not getting the time with the FaceTime with my children and my wife. And oftentimes was the case that, I'd perform for little to no money. And so I knew that I had to do something else. And so I say all that to say, during the course of developing my skill sets as a one-man band, so to speak, even though I was a part of multiple bands, ironically, I knew that I could basically take these skill sets and help other people who were doing great things, but maybe didn't have the infrastructure of a Fortune 100 multi-billion-dollar enterprise to communicate what it was that they needed to communicate, to showcase the great services that they had, the products that they had, and so on and so forth. And so my first client actually was a good friend of mine in college. He was actually going to dental school at the time that I was doing my undergraduate studies there. And he had opened up a private dental practice, basically revamped it from the ground up. And he needed some marketing material. And he started a podcast and launched kind of a membership site for basically dental practice owners who didn't want to rely solely on insurance repayments to boost their revenues and profit margins. Because frankly speaking, like, the repayment rate on some of these insurance policies are crazy for the private practice owner. But without getting into a tangent there, he knew that he needed to develop these content systems. And so I helped him with that over the course of 5 years. We worked together, week in and week out. And I slowly started to divert my attention away from music to developing more of these kind of content systems, so to speak, for others who were in similar situations as my friend. And one thing led to another. And without getting into too much of the weeds here, I ended up getting into video first podcasting. I found that to be the most effective, practical solution for not just the service-based, business owner, but even the person who was, had virtual services. Then this became very popular in unfortunately, the pandemic, right? People had to go home, and the services that they offered in person were not offered as much anymore. And so they had to kind of pivot. And so that's where that solution came to be. And because of the systems that I had set up, and I'll wrap it up here, I was able to run a lean, efficient video first content agency with no more than 2 to 3 people, myself and my I guess my employees, I call them partners, but my employees, and drive results for businesses. And eventually that's how you and I met, because I was able to do it full time after some time working part time on this and full time at USAA.
Fabulous, Nico. And you know what's really cool is, and one of the things we haven't gotten to is your why operating system. Which, you know, if you come on the Lead Different podcast, we're obviously, my business is Why Not Leadership. Everything I do starts with helping people discover their why. And as you told that story, I could see, you know, your why of better way just coming out. You have found a better way for people to do video first podcasting and effectively. So what you've done is you took that experience, and I heard this in your story. You learned a lot of processes, and you took a lot of what you learned at a great organization like USAA. And this is something Better Way people do. They'll take stuff from one industry and they're able to apply it in another. So you've applied it to this industry, and then, like a true Better Way person, you want to share it. You're sharing it with the world through the services that you provide. Your how is mastery. So this is important for our audience, and everybody. Most of the people that are listening, Nico, have taken their YOS. They know about the 9 whys. So this is why I like to get into it. So your why is to find a better way, but your how is mastery, which means you're someone who will delve deep and learn the nuances of the work that you do in order to be a trusted source. You want to make sure that things that you provide and the services you provide and the materials that you reference and everything is done at a deep level. So there's some depth to the work that that you provide. And then your what is to make sense. And this is one of the genius things about your why operating system, Nico, is mastery and make sense. When you pair those, you're someone that knows a lot, but you're able to make sense of it simply for people. Sometimes, a lot of times, people with the why of mastery in their top 3 will run into issues because they tend to over explain things, and because you know so much, you want to share it all, and not everybody wants to hear all the details. So your make sense can kind of jump in there and say, hey, let me help you make sense of it very quickly, rather than giving you everything that I know. But if you want to know everything, I have it. It's in the back, right? It's in the backup slides. So it was really cool watching you explain that, knowing and sharing your expertise with us. So this is the first, and my podcast is a video first podcast. Actually, it was a video only podcast for a long time, but it's a video. Tell us what that means, because I think those that are out there that are doing podcasting probably haven't heard about it. Tell us what it means, and then how does that play into the content machine that you've created?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And this is really what we're getting into, the what and the why. So the what is, for me, I realized, and I look, candidly, I grew up kind of towards the beginning of social media, where MySpace was a thing back when I was in high school. YouTube, I think, launched in 2007. I had my first YouTube channel back in 2007. I learned how to produce, mix, master my own vocals because of YouTube creators before that was even a thing. And even learning how to shoot video and edit video because of people on YouTube. And so I've always found the value of, the content that was on YouTube. And eventually I started noticing that there were a lot of creators on there, and that's what they're called, content creators, but basically influencers, so to speak, that, had entertaining content. There was some pranks and, spoof music videos that would come out. And that's kind of what took over YouTube. But eventually people like, Alex Hormozy and Layla Hormozy and a few other founders who have actually done great things with their lives. And not to say that you can't do great things and entertain people, because I think there's a time and a place for that. But things that I've valued as a kind of a founder myself, so to speak. And then they were able to showcase it in a video format. And I found that the video first podcast, even though they didn't necessarily call it that, was a little bit more captivating than the audio only. And here's why. Edutainment. So when you look at the most impactful content on YouTube right now, the stuff that really garners the attention of high value prospects and clients, right? It's the thing that basically where you're coupling your expertise, so to speak, diving sometimes into the minutia or the high level, and being able to showcase that in a visual format. You'll have slides, maybe you'll have like a iPad with, a little whiteboard or a whiteboard behind you, literally like just, tearing paper and writing stuff out. And I found that the content style that had helped me gravitate towards creators like Alex Ramosi, who was, again, a 9-figure founder himself, was that type of style. It was kind of the more laid back, as if I'm sitting in a classroom, in college again, but optimized for highest retention and optimized for basically me learning the information in a streamlined fashion. And so I noticed that this was kind of a repetitive thing, coupling that. So the high value edutainment content, coupling it with conversations like this, Dan, where you have a subject matter expert on your podcast and they bring some value to your audience. And you think, wow, man, Dan really knows some great people. I'd love to work with him because, look, I know if I work with Dan, he's going to know Nico. He's going to know this guy. He's going to know that gal. And if Dan doesn't know the answer, he'll know how to reach out to these people. And so that automatically positions you to become kind of not just the expert, but basically a valuable access point, so to speak, although it sounds very transactional, but that's kind of the case for people to get to the place where they want to go and they need to go effectively. And so that's effectively what I've synthesized into this video first podcast is right, kind of the high value edutainment style content, those monologue episodes where you can just talk and showcase a little bit of your what, not necessarily your how. And then 2, the interview, testimonial, subject matter expert type of content where you have one or more people on the podcast. You can have conversations, but it's very intentional, right? It's almost like a mini masterclass. And you sit there, you soak in the information as a listener and a viewer. And now you're like, man, I'm looking at these two talk to each other. I'm seeing how Dan works. I want to work with that guy. I trust and believe that he knows what he's doing, and he's shown it to me in this last hour. And I'll give you just a tidbit of information here. I was recently a part of a cohort of LinkedIn influencers, kind of a funny thing to think about, but they're there. And a gentleman by the name of Steve Bartlett, he is a founder and podcast host of a podcast called Diary of a CEO. It's pretty big on YouTube. You can look it up. He always gets number one pick, meaning that he's always top of mind for any sort of conference or speaking engagement that involves founders or CEOs or executives or leaders in the UK, because he's based out of there. Why? Because he's positioned himself not necessarily as the go-to expert in everything, but because he is a founder, he's done something great with his life as a founder. And because of the platform that he's built with his video first podcast, he interviews incredible guests. I'm talking like, you'll see some of the people on there. He's interviewed some incredible guests. Now he's the person that people want to have on their stages, right? And so you can't undermine and undervalue the power of developing a personal brand with not just your voice, but your face, your authenticity, and your ability to showcase not just the things that you know, but who you know. And that's why I feel like if I could distribute it and bring that to the masses, at least to 50 to 100 incredible leaders like yourself, Dan, I think that we could make the world a little bit of a better place.
Man, I'm excited. I had an interview. I'm adding a new person to my team, and I had an interview right before you and I came on. And one of the things we had her do was listen to our podcast. And she came on and she says, your podcast is so motivating. I felt like I needed to do more because of the people you interviewed, and that's great. But here's what and then this is the problem probably a lot of us have. If people will watch the podcast and we're talking to the right audience, they're going to get turned on by it. But we're not reaching as many people as we would like. And I know that's something that you help with, Nico. So what are some mistakes that founders are making, or that you see that are maybe, we don't want to give away the process. I believe in as in anything, we want to show people, hey, this is what you can get. And your how is, that's your IP. That's what people obviously pay you for. But what are some simple things that people are not doing that are keeping them from growing their podcast audience, short of hiring you? That's the number one thing they should be doing. But then the next, what are some simple things that someone who's listening can do?
Well, I don't mind sharing some of the how, because even the how is very customizable and has to be customized to you. So basically, one of the first key errors that I've seen is when it comes to your product or your podcast positioning.
Mm.
And so it's easy to get on camera. It's easy to talk, turn on a camera, put a video up, and all that stuff. That's the easy part. The hard part is doing the pre-planning. Who are you talking to? Who is your avatar, your ICP? What are the things that they're interested in? Who would they want to listen to? What do they look like? How do they sound? And from there, crafting based off of your solution for their pain points, 4 to 5 content pillars that you continuously talk about, because repetition is key. We need to be reminded of things day in and day out. I mean, that's why we go to church, on Sundays, and we typically hear a variation of a similar sermon. Why? Because we're forgetful creatures, and we need to be told and retold the same thing over and over again. And so it's the same thing with podcasting. The video podcasting medium is just a channel or a way for you to convey your message. But at the end of the day, if your messaging isn't clear, then your prospect isn't going to be clear about who it is that you are, what it is that you do, and why they should hire you for the how. So that's the first step, is laying the foundation. But then from there, to your point, Dan, is after you've ironed out specifically the messaging and you know exactly who it is, you have to have realistic outcomes, right? Like meaning that if there's 100,000 viewers or 100,000 potential people that could be in the ICP that you've carefully crafted and designed, and those 100,000 people are also on YouTube or podcasting platforms, and doing some math here, and just not to get into the nitty gritty here, like I typically could tend to do, but let's say hypothetically speaking, you have like a 3% conversion rate, which is kind of industry average for any and all videos on YouTube. Okay, that means that your videos could reach potentially 3,000 viewers at a given time based on your ICP. But if you don't have that, ironed out in the beginning, your expectation will be to go for the 10,000, the 100,000 views, which is fine, but it's not going to target the people that you particularly want to target. And then you start chasing for the wrong thing, and you muddy up the messaging for the sake of the views. And that's unfortunately incorrect. Now, the latter part would be, strategizing with NTS Media to make sure that we get your marketing materials in order, that your brand looks clear and concise, that we get some, promotional ads up and running, that we get some organic strategies there. I mean, those are all the details that we work out with, so you don't have to figure that stuff out on your own. That's where our expertise comes into play. But believe it or not, it's oftentimes the simplest thing that can drive your video podcast and your content strategy to that nth level. And oftentimes we miss it and overlook it because we tend to overcomplicate things.
Man, I love that you're so generous, and you mentioned that, Nico. I wanted to get back to that because one of the things that also attracted to me is you're not afraid to talk about your faith. You mentioned it's why we go to church, right? And and you're a young father with 3 kids and one on the way, and I know you're paying private school tuition for them. But I think it's important to understand, especially this week, and I don't know when this episode will air, but this week I'm flying to Florida to talk at a faith and leadership conference. So how do you, and the topic that I chose to talk about is building a coaching business without compromising your core values and your faith. I think, when we talk about that ideal client, for me, an ideal client is for that specific audience is, hey, are you a business owner who is having trouble putting it all together and also maintaining your core values as you scale and grow, right? Because there are some tough decisions that you'll have to make as a CEO. How have you been able to do that? Like I said, keep your strong faith and continue to grow. And what are some of the steps that you've taken to ensure that you're going in the right direction and being a positive influence, both to your clients, but even as an example to your growing family?
Yeah, I wish I could say, Dan, I've done it perfectly and gracefully, but that would be a lie. And that's one of the reasons why, in my purview, in my worldview, really, is why I need faith, and why, the faith that I subscribe to is so important to me, because I realize that we're imperfect human beings, and that ultimately speaking, we need a savior to save us. And so the onus on having everything figured out is no longer on me, but is on the one who created me. And so I think that that's kind of the beautiful part, because it helps me craft kind of the roadmap for people and say, look, what you're looking for is progression, right? Progress over perfection. You're not going to be perfect on your first piece of content. You're not going to be perfect on your 10th piece of content. But as long as you're aiming for 1% growth every single day, that's what matters. That's a philosophy that I've adapted into my life. And sure, some days I can backslide and maybe not feel the best version of myself, and maybe I lost my temper with my 4-year-old twin daughters, or wasn't as empathetic towards my wife who needed a little bit more of me that day. But we can sit back and recognize it and analyze that day and say, I could have done this better, I should have done this better, I will do this better. And it's the same thing if you carry that philosophy with your content, with your products, with your sales and marketing strategy. That, in my personal opinion, is the competitive advantage of any entrepreneur. And so, to your point, Dan, I don't think it has to be a crossroads where we have to face whether or not we're going to compromise our values or morals. It's just a matter of, man, how can I use these values that already give me a competitive edge to grow my business and impact more people, more importantly, and then two, to help me have the accountability, right? I think we all need that accountability, the people in our lives that help us raise our standards for ourselves, the coaches, the consultants, the marketing guy who said, you can do this better, you got this, let's go for it. That's who we need in our lives. And exactly that's why I tried to provide that same framework outside of just the the bits and bytes, so to speak, the technicalities. Like, I try to help raise you as a person, right, to ensure that what we're doing together is going to help you become better each and every single day and in every aspect of your business, not just your content.
Love that. And that's really, really good. Thank you for sharing that, Nico. One of the other things you mentioned in the previous answer, you talked about ICP, that ideal client profile. And so many people, and it happens to us in the coaching industry. We're working with someone and we say, so who's your ideal client? And they say, well, anybody who wants to grow. Well, that's like the whole world, right? Every business wants to grow. Who is your ideal client profile? Is there a process, a secret to finding that ideal client that you have found successfully to help people find it? What kind of discussions do you have? How do you take people through that process so that they find the ideal client for themselves, and then you can help them target them?
Yeah, for me, since I've worked in a kind of a coaching capacity in the past, the thing that I've told the people who don't honestly have a refined offer or refined avatar is, be the person, be the senior that you needed when you were a junior. Be that executive that you needed when you were an entry level employee. Be that mentor that you needed when you first started out your business, and target that person. Someone that's 10, 5 years younger than you, someone who is just going through this particular phase. That's probably the easiest thing, because why? You could speak directly to younger you with no problems and no qualms. Now, once you start gathering some feedback and some data, once you start having actual conversations with people that you're mentoring or guiding or walking with, and having that empathetic approach in your services or your products and listening to them, you'll find that maybe that avatar slowly changes over time, or maybe is more refined, and you know exactly who it is that you like working with and who has gotten better results from your product or service. So I think initially having kind of just that initial entry point of like, talk to myself, 5 to 10 year younger version of myself, and helping me cross that next step would be kind of the ideal place to start. But of course, just having that empathetic approach to listening, and serving your audience base, and then hearing what they have, and then refining it even further to continue to expand that audience, or perhaps niching down even further so that you can get your clients better results with less time, what seems to be less effort, and potentially getting paid more for it, which would be great.
I like that you mentioned something real important: progression versus perfection, right? You got to just make progress, get 1% better, just get better every single day. A lot of clients I work with, they want to start here and they want to move to here tomorrow. And we realize that, hey, it's okay if there are days, like you said, when you backslide and you take a step backwards. There are weeks when we do our weekly review that I'm sitting with the client, and they're like, oh man, last week was a mess. I didn't set my goals. I didn't prioritize my week. And before I knew it, the week was gone, right? If you don't set priorities. The other thing you mentioned is you mentioned some of the stuff that you believe. And one of the things I truly believe is powerful is if you let people know what you believe, you're going to attract people who believe what you believe. And so you kind of put that out there with your marketing. And when you figure out who that ideal client is, what do they believe? And how can you convey that, hey, I believe what you believe. Do you want to work with me? Right. So for you, it's people who are looking for a better way. People who believe that there's got to be a better way to do this. Nico's probably your guy. There's got to be there's more out there than I could ever learn. And that I don't want to learn. Those are people that Nico can help because he's learned it at a deep level and he understands it. And he can help you find that little lever you can twist that's going to make a biggest impact. Everybody wants to know, what's the smallest thing I can do that's going to make the biggest impact? Those are the little levers that mastery people like yourself will do. And then I want somebody that will help me make sense of it. Those are your ideal clients that believe that, hey, there's got to be a simpler way for me to understand this. And so you'll take them, you'll show them a better way. You'll show them the background, everything that you've done in order to get really good at this. And then you'll help them make sense of it so they can implement it in their business. So I'm sure you're already doing that. You have an ideal client profile. Who are the people that should be calling NTS Media, Nico? Who are the people that you say, hey, man, I can help you. Please reach out to me.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And as mentioned before, there's a process of refining the avatar, but the people that I found have really enjoyed working with me are those who are gifted in one area of their lives, who have achieved to a degree mastery. Let's say, for example, the dental practice owner who is, basically a craftsman in the sense of like, he knows how to fix your smile from start to finish. And he's really good at that. He's good at starting a business and building his private practice to become profitable. He's really good at that. But, maybe he didn't have the time or the energy or the money to, at the time when he was forming his skill set, to buy the camera, learn the editing software, to really understand what messaging is in terms of marketing. And so that's where I come in is you have mastery in one area, but you need just the amplification of your content and developing that roadmap so that you can then, blast it across multiple media, social media platforms, right? Starting with YouTube, then maybe LinkedIn or Facebook, or depending where your ICP sits and, kind of waits for content to be delivered to them, and then growing from there. But again, I think that ICP, the person who's already been doing content for some time, who values content, who understands, maybe not the intricacies of, launching their first podcast or doing the first video edit or, making graphics for it, but they know that they've gotten into like, yeah, man, I posted for 6 months straight on LinkedIn and I got one client. Like, what else could I be doing? Right. There is a better way, to your point, Dan. And I think that that's kind of just the next level up of like, okay, you value content, you understand that it's important, you value its place in your business, right? But you also know that you're good at one thing, but you need help in the other thing, which is content systems, and you need someone who has done it before and has been successful at it. And so that's where we come in and we help craft that roadmap. And look, to your point, Dan, some people have exponential growth because they've done the work before they started working with you and they just needed that one unlock, and it just takes them to the moon in the first 30, 60, 90 days. Other people, they need to sit in the foundation first and foremost for quite a bit of time, honestly, before they see the growth that they're deserving to receive. Because I do believe that some of us need to just sit in that inner work first before we receive kind of that external validation, so to speak, by way of the results that our content and even our products or services, that the results that we want to yield from them. And so I think some people have to sit in that. And so, yeah, I think having those expectations that it's going to be different for everyone is also key.
Don Barton, who I had on a couple of weeks ago, talked about the fact that it's not the how, it's the who's. A lot of times it's finding the right who's to do those hows. There is no way I guess I could, but it would probably take me years to learn everything you've already learned. It would take me a long time for me to figure out how to use all the tools and create the way that you already create. So why not take that press that fast forward button, right? And hire the who's already done all the homework, who's already experienced some of the failures that you have multiple times and has learned from it. And he's not going to make that mistake with your podcast, with your content, reaching your ICP so that you can move forward faster to what it is that you do best. I enjoy, I want to spend as much time as I can with my coaching clients, with their companies, and helping them optimize their teams. This is the stuff that's going to lead to more people calling me. But I don't want to do that stuff, because if I spend all my time doing that, I'm not going to have time to hone the skills that I need to make a difference for those companies and those leaders that hire me. So that's where I want to spend my time. I think NTS Media is a great who to help us get there. And as I started the program with, your work is impeccable, Nico. Like I said, it led to a standing ovation at this last talk. I'm going to use it again in Fort Lauderdale this week when I'm there for that leadership conference. And I'm sure I will report to you what we get in terms of the reaction, and then also the take on rate, because I think it's an inspiring work that you did. It's so customized to me. It's as if I had musical talent, that's probably what I would love to have come up with, but I have none. And so we went to you, and you and your team put together an amazing song, so well produced, and so representative of Why Not Leadership and the Lead Different podcast. So thank you for doing that for us.
Yeah, no problem. And just to kind of touch on a few things here, and just wrap it up real quick, is, that's one of the things, Dan, that I really hone in on, is because of the fact that you are already a master at your craft, and your highest impact is in coaching the people that come to you for coaching, the leaders, the executives, so on and so forth. I personally would not want you to spend the time, the money, or the energy learning how to do what I do, because it's going to detract from your mission in life. Look, I believe that we all have a purpose and a mission in our lives, and to use your gifts and talents that God gave you to impact the most amount of people, that's what you should do. And I think it would be a disservice for anyone who's listening to this podcast, or you yourself, Dan, to take the precious time, energy that you have to start focusing on something other than what you've already been doing really, really well. And so that's the same thing for me. Like, I'm not going to, as much as I've diverted and kind of focused on other things here and there, I know that I'm good at this. This is the one thing that God has given me the gift and the talent to like focus and grow at. And so my next goal really is to make it as scalable as possible without compromising customization. And that's key. And that's what AI and systems and processes have enabled me to do, to customize things for the clients that I've been able to serve and work with. And I think it's great because it makes it a symbiotic relationship, and it's more valuable than a $9.99 course where you try to figure things out on your own and you're like, oh man, I bought this course, I tried to apply it, and I didn't get any results. And why? Because we're all different. So that's why.
Everybody's different. Everybody has their own needs. Nico, can you believe we're already, I keep this show between 30 and 40 minutes. We're 41 minutes in, and I have a ton more questions for you, but we'll just have to have you back. I know that Why Not Leadership is hiring NTS Media to do another video project for us. And I know you and I are going to be in touch. So as we continue building our product and adding some of the things that you do to our services, people will get a chance to see us, see our collaborations. As a matter of fact, in September, we're going to make the video that I premiered at the YCon last week. I'm going to premiere it on YouTube, and everybody's going to get a chance to see it. So they'll see some of your work. If you want to see it, go to my YouTube channel, the Lead Different Podcast, and it's going to premiere, and you'll be able to see it. Nico, how can someone get a hold of? What's the best way to get a hold of you if they are looking for somebody to guide them through this journey of building an online presence through video podcasting or through enhancing their video offerings?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I have my LinkedIn, my personal LinkedIn. You can look me up, Nico Torres Santana. Like I mentioned, founder of NTS Media. I'm very active on there, and that's typically how I've been engaging with people one-on-one. So you could definitely find me on there. Next step would be to consume some of my content on YouTube. So I have a separate YouTube channel that I've just started, and you'll be able to find that there on LinkedIn. But if you want kind of a customized 90-day roadmap for your business and for your content strategy, I can actually customize one for you. Just go to podcastmachine.io. So that's www.podcastmachine.io. There's a little explainer video there, about 7 minutes worth of your time. You can click apply. And if you and I are a good fit to work together, I'll craft that 90-day plan for you and your business, and we'll make sure to keep you up and running in no time.
That sounds fantastic, Nico. Thank you so much for being on. Guys, please don't forget, if you enjoyed our conversation with Nico, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, give us a comment, and don't forget to share it on any one of your podcast platforms with their, whether that's Apple Podcast or Podbean. We're on all the platforms. Share it with your friends. Don't keep it to yourself, because we want to help everybody in this world lead different through the power of self-awareness. Nico, what do you say we end the show on that note?
Let's do it, Dan.
Thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Lead Different podcast. Have a great rest of the week. And don't forget to continue to lead.